Well, my name is Miles Steyer, and before I get started, I have a few questions for you. So raise your hand if you consider yourself an artist. Okay, we got a few artists. Raise your hand if you consider yourself just creative in general. Okay, so everyone in the room is somewhat creative. And then raise your hand if you're associated with TCC in some way. Okay, great. We got a lot of TCC folks out here. Always just good to know. My name is Miles Steyer. I live in Tacoma. I'm an artist, and I also have a small business that does web design, digital marketing, and tech support for artists and creatives. So I'm really interested in trying to marry creativity and technology, and I'm also really interested in helping artists kind of develop and put forward their work. So that's kind of what I do. As I said, I'm an artist, although I don't do work that frequently, and I don't have a recognizable style or medium. I kind of just do whatever interests me. I like to use it as an opportunity to learn new skills and techniques. And I think that the definition of an artist is just anyone who makes art. Whether they're formally trained, whether they do it often or sell it for work or for money, you're an artist. But that means that to be an artist, you actually have to do something. You actually have to create work. And that's really difficult. I think you've got internal things that hold you back, and then you've got all these external obstacles as well that you have to overcome. So today, since what I do is I try to help artists, I'm going to talk about this through the perspective of a tool that I use to help me come up with new ideas and execute creative projects. So I have a little handout for everybody. And this is a new tool that I'm using to kind of help people move forward in their creative projects. There we go. And I think I'll just use it to kind of talk about this and my process for making this and making art in general. So I think that whenever you start off with a creative project, you have to recognize your own kind of internal visions and obstacles. And I think the first thing to do is to really create a solid vision for what you want your piece or what you want your project to be about. So for me, for this piece, I wanted to create a piece that had two sides of a cultural topic at the same time in some way. I wanted it to look beautiful. I wanted it to look kind of like an everyday object, but also a piece of art. It could, be in a children's room as a lamp, or it could be in an art space as a piece of art. I wanted to reuse materials that I had with me and kind of enhance it. And I wanted to create a piece that looked cute, but had kind of a mixed or darker or complicated message under it. So for me, creating that vision is really important, whether it's just a bullet of things you want to do in your piece, of what you want it to look like, or even what you want a final event to feel like. You want to create this as detailed message as you can of what you want to accomplish. And then think about your own demons holding you back. Is it fear? Is it anger, jealousy? What are these emotions that you spend energy on instead of being creative? So, for me, it's fear that the piece is not going to work out, or fear that it's going to be misunderstood, or jealousy or anger. I can recognize those as I'm going into a project so that when those thoughts start popping up, I recognize that they're not productive and that I can let them go. I also always like to find someone that I can talk about these inner issues with. So whenever I come up with a project, I also think of a person who I could contact in case I needed to think through it. So this side is all the internal stuff. On the other side is all the external obstacles. So the first is to come up with a list of resources. And this list of resources includes all the materials, but also the other resources like time and money that you might need in order to do this. So for this piece, the wooden base was a lamp that I found at Goodwill. It's Goodwill and Salvation Army and other stores like that are a great place of finding materials that you can redo or remake, and that's what I did in this case. I spray painted everything and replaced all the electrical so that it could be a functioning modern lamp. I replaced the wire ribbing and made the whole thing larger because I wanted a larger canvas on which to create these little vignettes. I made this canvas top out of a linen top out of a napkin and shoelaces. And then the insides are made out of wire and paper and cellophane that I could find at the local stores. So the materials are pretty easy, and in some of them I had to improvise. And I think that that's one thing that I really recommend for artists, is that when you make your list of all your resources you need, including the materials and the time, some of them may not come easy, but you have to find ways of improvising. The next is the actions that you take in order to create a piece. And this can be a simple list of tasks, but it could also be research, learning, practice, everything that you would need to actually make it happen. And then I usually try to find someone who actually has skills or has accomplished a similar project to also be someone that can help me along the way. Finally, I always kind of make a contract with myself that I've set this vision, I've found people who can help me, I've created a plan, so now I'm really going to commit to this and just do my best. So that's kind of my whole process for making art. Sometimes it goes well and sometimes it doesn't go so well. But in this piece, I really like how it turned out. There are things I see here and there where I wish I could have done better or had different materials, but I think when you're building something new, you have to sometimes play with what happens and accept what happens. And I think it came out well. The message for this piece in particular is kind of about the way that we view the United States and our relationship with the land and our identity here. Because many of us come from backgrounds of people who came here as missionaries or as pioneers or as settlers, in which case this was seen as a land of opportunity, a land of plenty, and that it was ours for the taking or the trying. And then there are other people who came here long before and really see the migration of people in here as a destructive history of death and destruction and colossal cataclysmic change. And the thing is that both sides are true, and both sides have a place when we talk about the history of this area in the United States. So that's what this piece was trying to convey, that in history we have multiple views, and to ignore one or to just favor the one we like is losing the bigger picture and losing part of who you are and part of your history. So that's kind of the basis of this piece. Are there any questions in general about how this piece was made or what it represents? Yeah, Lisa.
Did you come up with the idea after you found the object, or do you actually do it like this in your head? You get the idea first and then go find the object?
It really depends.
Did I say that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when I'm kind of creating this vision of what I want, it really depends on what the situation is. For this show, I knew what the topic was, culture, and I knew that it was about bias and how different parts of our culture see one another. And so that was kind of the framing idea. And then I looked around at what I had and tried to think of compelling stories or images that would relate to this. And for this one, I just saw the wagon and realized that that kind of settler culture does have a lot of tension in it, and there is a lot of different viewpoints about it. So that would be a great opportunity to talk and show culture. So from that, then I just kind of kept going with the message and iterating and showing people until I had the right kind of vignettes. So that's kind of how the ideas happened. Yes?
I just wanted to compliment you on this. This is a fantastic worksheet.
Okay,
I
good.
think you could do workshops with people and artists.
Oh, sure. Yeah, because I sent out this survey to artists around the area, and I got about 20 responses or so. And one of the questions was, what is your biggest obstacle to accomplishing your creative goals this year? And I got a lot of different responses. Let me get my little Post-it. There. And here were some of the obstacles. Non-art homework and housework, time, not being overwhelmed, time to learn, inertia and health, childcare, time management, laziness, money and time, money, a lot of time and money. And I mean, that's certainly true. I mean, this is the reality of being an artist, is that you only have so much time to give to art, you only have so much money to give to art. But if you want to be an artist, you still have to make art, you have to still exercise those muscles. So how do you do that for yourself? And that's one reason why in the back I had this idea of coming up with the resources you need and then identifying the ones that are going to be the hardest for you to get, because those is where you'll have to improvise the most. Now, with time, that's difficult because we all have the same 24 hours and we all have different, kind of pulls on ourselves. And especially when you have to take care of other people, child care, elder care, how do you deal with that? And so identifying those areas where you may need to be very creative in how you get those resources is important in creating art. Is there a way that you can multitask and care and do art? That's not always going to be possible or safe for some mediums. Can you do a care swap with another artist? Can you find someone who every other week you take care of children so that the other person can do art? Or can you do kind of a childcare co-op? These are the kinds of things that are not easy to do, but are really necessary in order to create enough time for yourself. And as far as money, that's also really tricky because especially when you want things to look nice or display well, sometimes framing and display can be just as expensive as the actual art itself, which is crazy, but it's the reality of the situation. So how can you improvise with those things? Can you get frames and framing equipment from Goodwill? Can you reuse what you have? Can you create materials or use materials that you have on hand? I think it's really a shame that people stop working on ideas because they don't have exactly what they want immediately when they need it. So I think it is important to be flexible and creative when you come up with that. Any other questions? Yes, hi.
Do you create your work according to whatever the show offers?
With TCC, I usually leave the application deadlines in my phone, and I'll usually create a piece specifically for the show. But for my own work, I just do whatever interests me, and I usually have some part of it that I'm trying to learn for the first time, and that is exciting to me, whether that's using a new piece of technology or a new idea. There has to be something like that going on for me to be inspired enough to do it.
This is very impressive, minds. It's like thinking, adding the left brain into the
Yeah.
creative process. Because I definitely do not do this.
Right.
There is no pen to paper in analyzing my process. It's just
And not every project needs that. If you're doing something more intuitive, it's good just to let that expressive voice come out. But I think when you're doing something new for the first time,
sorry.
that's all right.
Comedy section.
Yeah. I think when you're doing something new for the first time, or doing something larger than you're used to, or something that requires a collection of actions or resources, this is a nice framing kind of technique.
It really is. Well done.
Yeah, Lisa.
I just have a compliment. I love, or comment, I love how you that it's okay to reach out to somebody and say, hey, you know, I need your support, back me up, or, you know, help me
Right.
see
Right.
what I'm missing, or.
And you know, it's important to find the right people for you, because you want, for the person who helps you get through your inner demons, so to speak, it has to be someone who knows you and understands your vision. It's not gonna, you know, talk down to your vision. And you also want someone who may have experience overcoming what you overcome, whether that's anger or fear or self-doubt, so that they can recognize, oh, that's not a productive thought, so you need to take all your energy from that and actually put it toward work instead of fear or anger. And likewise, with the person who helps you execute, it's really important to find someone who respects the medium you're going to work in and also has some experience in it, so they can give you some real advice when you experience problems. Because let's say you can't find a certain material or tool, they might be a great resource for finding it. So it's always good to have that person who has experience in what you're doing as well. And to ask for help, because there's no reason to stay in your head or to feel frustrated if someone can help you out. Anything else? No? Well,
So we have your contact number.
yes, you do. You do. And yeah, you know, if you want to go and use this, and then reach out to me and let me know how it goes. I'd love to hear if this is useful to you, or if it can help you, you know, create a vision for 2019 that you'd like to accomplish. So, thank you all for being here.